Cayman moon,
The voice of the Cayman Islands, Radio Cayman.
shining down from above.
We love our listeners.
Radio Cayman in the Cayman Islands.
Money Sense is brought to you with the support of OneTradeX. OneTradeX, the Cayman Islands' #1 choice for online brokerage. OneTradeX knows there's more than one way to invest. OneTradeX is the Cayman Islands' only fully licensed online broker-dealer, offering discount trading services to individual investors and traders, hedge fund managers, and family offices. OneTradeX has the most competitive online trading prices of any offshore broker worldwide, with no custody or management fees, free demonstration accounts, and no charge to open an account with a $5,000 minimum deposit. Trade stocks, options, futures, bonds, and Forex. Learn more and open your free demo account today at OneTradeX.com. OneTradeX, the Cayman Islands' #1 choice for online brokerage. OneTradeX is licensed to conduct securities investment business by the Cayman Islands Monetary Authority.
Live from Radio Cayman Studio, this is
Money Sense, bringing an informed financial perspective to the Cayman community.
Good morning and welcome to Money Sense. I'm your host, Amy Hubble, and today we have a special ladies-only panel live in studio with me. Joining us again, which I know both of you have been here multiple times from the CFA Society Cayman Islands, is Georgie Loxton, the founder of Liberty Wealth Partners, and Monique Frederick, the head of asset management for Butterfield Bank. Good morning, ladies, and thank you for joining us again.
Thanks for having us.
All right, and in addition, we have a special guest with us today, Ms. Rianka Dorsonville. Rianka is the founder and president of Your Greatest Contribution, a virtual financial planning firm in the U.S. You'll see her on TV as part of CNBC's Digital Financial Advisor Council. She also sits on the Certified Financial Planner Board's Diversity Advisory Group, and she has been in Investment News' inaugural 2017 Women to Watch Rising Star, Wealth Management's 10 to Watch in 2018, and has been published in Forbes, USA Today, Black Enterprise, CNBC, Women's Health, and more. Welcome, Rianka, and a happy late birthday yesterday.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right. I feel like we're a nerdier version of The View this morning. Kicked all the guys out. But, Rianka, you also host a podcast, and it's called 2050 Trailblazers, right? Mm-hmm. And it's devoted to increasing diversity of all types,
right?
But specifically within the financial industry. Mm-hmm. Tell us why creating a gender-balanced culture was important to you, and why you took such a passionate interest kind of in this subject.
Yeah, well, in America, we are transitioning into a very beautiful mosaic of different cultures, different backgrounds. Women are almost 50% of the population. And so we want to see, just a more balance in the workplace as well. Women tend to be the head of the household when it comes to like the finances and like being the financial steward of the household. And so we have to just continue to increase the education so that when it comes time for us to start, managing the household, the finances and everything, we can be confident when we do so.
Yeah, absolutely. And speaking of kind of managing the finance and making that career decision and the education that's involved, I saw a stat that kind of 40% of career decisions happen between the ages of 18 and 21, which you assume to kind of be college years. But that seems like a very young age to kind of make that decision of what you're going to be doing for the rest of your lives. I mean, was that the same way for you guys? For me, I didn't know. But Georgie, when did you decide this was what you wanted to do, and kind of what was your path there?
I sort of fell into it, I think. I graduated in 2004. No, I actually graduated in 2003 and didn't really know what I wanted to do, so I stayed on and did a master's. So 2004, it wasn't the best time to be joining the city, but I'd spent my holidays part-time working in an investment management firm. So I'd kind of got into the investment world just through that, just from sort of being an admin support literally in the holidays. So that was sort of my first, I suppose, eye-opener into the world of investing. And then my first job was in the City of London as a trainee investment manager. And it was there that I started doing my CFA straight away. But then it was really only in the last 5 years that I fell more
away from the very technical investment management stock picking side into the human side of the business, which is sort of the more financial planning and investment management combined. So I'd say really that's sort of been a transition that I would never have known was coming. It was very organic.
Yeah, is that almost... I mean, it's still within the same kind of realm, but it is almost like a career change from more just pure technical investment management and analysis to more behavioral, making sure people are doing the right thing at the right time, right? What about you, Monique? When did you make the decision? I just expect that you have had your whole life planned since you were like age 3.5.
No. I mean, through the college years for me as well, however, I actually did my undergrad in information systems. And then when I did my master's, I did my MBA with a concentration in finance. But I think somehow it's also a little bit subconscious in terms of when what you were exposed to when you grew up. At least for me it was, because both of my parents were in the financial services industry. So, but I mean, I chose it, but what you see in your environment and the things you become are the things you become familiar with, right? So it was, I guess, a natural progression for me to go into finance, even though I started out in IT first. And the main reason for IT is just because at that time there was a need for IT professionals. So, so I'm like, that's what I'm going to do.
Well, I learned something about you today. Now I know who to call. But that was kind of the same way with me. My dad was a banker, and I didn't even know what that meant necessarily, but turns out I was good at it, kind of fell into it the exact same way as Georgia's, who kind of started as administrative support and then just kind of worked my way up through that particular company to kind of where we are now. But what about you, Rianka?
Yeah, it's funny. Between 18 and 21, as you mentioned, we're, in our university years, our college years, and I had no idea what I wanted to do when I went to college. I just knew I was really good in math, and so that was actually why the major I declared. And then I took a class called Vector Geometry Calculus. I was like, this isn't for me. And so then I started exploring, and then I took a personal finance class. It was an elective course, and I fell in love because we were learning about student loans and what it means to take out student loan debt and credit cards, credit scores. In the United States, we have Social Security, and the big question then and still now is like, will there be enough when we retire, when the 20, 30-year-olds retire? And I just saw that you can actually make a tangible impact in people's lives immediately, and you can actually see it, and you can see that light bulb go off for them when you're informing them and educating them as far as with financial literacy. And that just drew me to it. So I knew I wanted to be a financial planner, not when I went to college, but definitely when I graduated.
Yeah, I always find it interesting how the paths kind of collide to get to where you are now, and kind of which paths you went, whether or not it was. And I know at least 3 of the 4 of us have started our own business, and Monique has worked her way up. But what, especially in the education-wise, I think all of us especially are very well designated as far as both the CFA charter holder and the CFP, Certified Financial Planner designation for us. What impact, I guess, do you guys think that can have on women, both from a confidence side? Because that was really what drove me to get some of these designations, was kind of getting that confidence that I think I lacked as a young woman in this field. Mm-hmm. Did any of you guys have the same kind of thoughts there?
I mean, I think just women in general, I think we feel that we must have certain qualifications to prove that we know what we're talking about. If you look at, you have many male counterparts in the industry that don't necessarily have those qualifications but have the experience over time. But for women to sort of get an entry into this field, right, it's difficult to just say, okay, I have the experience. So you feel that you must have the qualifications just to get a seat at the table. Mm-hmm. And I think that maybe is one of the differences where maybe some of our male counterparts don't necessarily feel they need to get those qualifications, right? The experience itself is sufficient. So I think it's critical for us to, as a starting point, you must have some qualification just to have a seat at the table.
Yeah, even if it's just in your own brain.
So
It's kind of heartbreaking to hear you say those words, but I think it's true. I think you've nailed it there.
Yeah. Definitely with the confidence piece. I know as soon as I got my CFP, the 3 years had passed of experience. I passed the exam. And the confidence I wore when I walked into client meetings was just a little different, And I think it is most of it, I think, is in our head of when we are giving advice to a client, especially if the client is twice our age. Or, much older than us. And, we're second guessing ourselves of, will they actually adhere to the advice that we're giving to them? Will they actually, take it, implement it? And you think about the various different things like, I'm walking in as a woman. I'm walking in as a woman of color. Will they listen to me? Or are they looking at something else? And so having the designations, I think, really helps with the confidence for sure.
Yeah. You feel the same, Georgie?
Yeah, I do. And I think, if you take gender out of it, I think that having the CFA qualification is almost now a prerequisite for any job in the investment management world, regardless really of whether you're a man or a woman. But I think that the confidence that it gives, particularly to women, is very important.
Which, speaking of, this is some interesting stats. So this was all from the CFA Institute research, so it's directed at kind of that women in investment management specifically. But women make up 50% of CPAs, so accountants. They make up 48% of medical students, 47% of law students, but only 18% globally CFA charter holders are women, that's a really questionable stat for me. Just I'm saying all these other professional designations, professional industries, professional professions that are basically 50-50. What's wrong with investments? That is a mentorship situation that we don't see other women in leadership there? What do you think, Rianka?
Oh, goodness. I'm so surprised at that stat for the CPA, because you hear in the financial planning world, in the CFP world, you hear that when we ask women why not choose a career in financial planning, they say, the numbers. I'm afraid of the numbers. So to hear almost 50% of CPAs are women is just mind-boggling. It's like, all right, well, what is the difference? And I think definitely having a mentor or taking it a step further and having a sponsor is totally different. So a mentor is that one that they listen to you, they take it, they give you advice and you take it. Sponsor literally holds your hand and pushes you to various outside of your comfort zone. So I think definitely because we don't have a lot of CFAs in the industry, there's not just a lot of women to help pull up other women. So if you are a woman, it's kind of like a responsibility of ours to help our generation and the next generation.
Yeah, I think that's totally true. And I think also the investment management industry, investing in general, has always been so male-dominated. When you think about the competitive, it's very testosterone-laden. Yeah. When you think about the terms, the bull market and the bear market,
right.
It's very masculine. Everything about it seems very...
Yes, the movies propagates that a lot.
Yeah, I think that... Unfortunately, and it's so sad. I think that probably turns women off. And as you say, they don't, young women don't look up and see lots of women, and they see a very, very male, masculine, testosterone-fueled industry, and it doesn't appeal to them.
Women are also more collaborative in nature. And so if we're going into an environment where we know we have to fight every single day, that's tiring. And I don't see us wanting to do that every single day.
Which is probably why 3 or 4 of us have set up our own firms.
Oh, yeah. That's right. But I don't want to hate on men too much, because I most of my mentors were men growing up. I say growing up, but in my early career. And I don't want to discount that necessarily. But I distinctly did not have any beyond kind of peers. I did have several peers, Rianka being one of them, of people that were doing similar things to me at the same time. But as far as specifically within the firm that I worked for and my career progression, it was all men. And that was okay. But I do think that there's a lot to be said for women mentors, or being able to see somebody that looks like you in the next position. So, Monique, I know you are the head of asset management for Butterfield. So I know we need to take a quick break, so let me come back to it. But think it over the break. We're going to take a 60-second break. We'll come back with our conversation with Rianka Dorsonville, Georgie Loxton, and Monique Frederick.
One TradeX knows there's more than one way to invest. One TradeX is the Cayman Islands' only fully licensed online broker-dealer, offering discount trading services to individual investors and traders, hedge fund managers, and family offices. One TradeX has the most competitive online trading prices of any offshore broker worldwide, with no custody or management fees, free demonstration accounts, and no charge to open an account with a $5,000 minimum deposit. Trade stocks, options, futures, bonds, and Forex. Learn more and open your free demo account today at OneTradeX.com. OneTradeX, the Cayman Islands' #1 choice for online brokerage. OneTradeX is licensed to conduct securities investment business by the Cayman Islands Monetary Authority.
This is
Money Sense, bringing an informed financial perspective to the Cayman community. Brought to you by the CFA Society Cayman Islands and sponsored by One TradeX.
And now, more Money Sense.
All right, welcome back. Before the break, we were talking about mentorship, and specifically women mentorship is in the kind of hierarchy of companies, of being able to see somebody at the top of a hierarchy that you can kind of either have as a sponsor or have as a mentor, as Rianka mentioned. And we were going to Monique to have some great thoughts pulled from, because she's the head of asset management and really is serving in that capacity as kind of a head of a department. And do you feel a responsibility to be a mentor for the women in your department?
I think there's a responsibility. May not necessarily be just within the department, but just within the company or the broader community. Because you do notice that in the field, there may not necessarily be that many women, within your own teams. But trying to basically get the next generation of those that are in university or coming through and having discussions about potential careers. That is something that I'm very passionate about, because I think we have a responsibility to do that. In terms of, for me, throughout the years, all the organizations that I've actually worked for, I was fortunate enough that I never felt like I was left out, or that, I was one person and my thoughts didn't matter. I never had those kinds of situations. There was either another female in the organization, or I've worked in organizations where there was a female ahead of me. So I think those things are important, and certainly speaking to the newcomers to into the investment industry. I think we all have a responsibility to do that.
Yeah, I would definitely agree, and I do, and you guys jump in if you feel the same. But I do think I feel a particular responsibility for, I think this is part of kind of women's train of thought, is I don't always feel like I've earned this position as much as sometimes I just feel like I got lucky in some ways and said yes to the right things and had some good opportunities at the right time, versus the mindset of I did this myself, I guess. And so I do feel like I owe it to them to kind of put them on the right track. And I know a lot of organizations that all of us are part of do a lot to encourage women to either take the CFA exam or take the CFP exam. We'll pay for it. We'll give you the materials. We'll give you the study situation to do it, and we'll come in and do it. Do you guys see a lot of women taking advantage of that?
Well, to the point of your comment around, our various industries, what they're doing for women, I know in particular in the financial planning world, specifically the CFP, we are noticing, you mentioned the stat, I believe, of 18% of CFAs are women. Mm-hmm. For CFPs, the stat is 23% and has remained the same for the past 15 years. And so the profession is looking at, well, why? And we notice women leave and they don't come back. And it's like, well, why? And it's maybe because it's family or childbearing years. Or we know that women are more likely responsible for the children and or aging parents. And so taking on that responsibility of being that caretaker, and it's like, all right, now I want to get back into the world of, in working and having a tough time. And so what the CFP board is doing is they initiated a program called the Reentry Program, where there's firms that help moms or dads who were helping to raise children and now trying to come back into the workforce, making it much easier and, slowly onboarding them as far as hours, because, you have to transition. You've been out of the workforce for many years, and I think that's just amazing.
Amazing. And it's a hard profession to come back to because it's client facing. So if you've built up your client book and then you leave, on maternity leave, and even if you come back, I know that women have come back and found, oh, crikey, all my clients have kind of been picked up by other people, and getting those relationships back, particularly if you then stay out for a couple of years, is obviously really hard. But going back to your point about the responsibility, I think, yes, we all have a huge responsibility to help women come into this profession. And I think we owe it to the women, but we owe it to the profession as well, because the profession desperately, desperately needs the qualities that women bring, because we think really differently from men about money and about investing, and our kind of inherent strengths really, really make us great investors. I mean, I think we don't talk about this enough, how great women are at financial planning and investing. Yeah. We're very long term in our thinking, more so often than men tend to be. That really helps when when you're looking at investing in financial planning.
Absolutely.
The studies show we make excellent investors, and I think that's a message that we need to get out more, is how good women are at it.
Yeah, yes. And we need more. And I do think it's a misconception that there's not flexibility in this, and I think all of us would agree in that. In that, yes, you do work hard, and sometimes, especially different times of the year, you are working long hours. But I've never felt that I've been restricted or that I couldn't step away from the office for a second here or there. I mean, would you guys agree?
I would agree. I think, and also if you have more females in the organizations, they would also know in terms of what flexibility their team would need, right? So giving your team that flexibility, I think, is also important. And, it's not a job that you necessarily need to be at your desk all day, right? Because it continues technically.
Well, we have a woman here who's running a virtual planning firm, right?
Exactly.
And so, more organizations and firms are truly embracing technology and being able to work from literally all over the world. And as, Georgie just mentioned, I have a virtual firm, and I can literally work from anywhere.
It's just amazing. I mean, it's such a powerful thing for a woman who wants to have a family and, try and find some balance. I really do think it's a great, great career path for women to actually have balance. I mean, I look at lawyers, for example, who, work crazy hours compared to, I think, the sort of hours that I had to work when I was working my way up in an investment management firm.
Yeah, I think it is completely different as far as that idea. I mean, we're on call all the time, which is good and bad, but it also means that we can have, I think, a balanced life, and it's a well-paying job too. I think we would all agree from that standpoint. There's no reason to get involved. But okay, so let's pivot here at the end of the show and talk just a little bit, because we just got off of International Women's Month in March, and April is Financial Literacy Month. So let's bridge that a little bit, because financial literacy with women is atrocious. And I think, Georgia, you were mentioning earlier that, and you can talk about kind of your thoughts on it, your belief to it, but that women have traditionally not been the money managers of the household, at least not from an investment side. But the majority of women at some point are going to be responsible for their own money, either because we're getting married later, or an unexpected divorce, or they're just
we live
outlive.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
At some point, you're going to need to know what you're doing here, and you don't just want to wake up one day and it be a surprise. So what do you think about the state of financial literacy and its importance for women?
Oh, gosh.
And that does seem like a loaded question.
It's so important. And I think, our industry has a lot to answer for here, because unfortunately financial services firms have not spoken to women at all You know, their messaging has never spoken to women. And I think the big banks and certainly in the US have been starting to try and do it, but have they got it right? No, probably not. They've still kind of taken their brochures and made them pink and thought, hey, this will appeal to women. And, the stats play out because, 75% of women, when their husband dies and they're responsible for their money, fire their investment manager.
Yeah.
That's a real stat. So, the financial services firms are to blame a lot, I think, for the lack of engagement that women have had in the investment part of their family finances. Like Rianka said, the women will often be the ones that have a very strong sense of what's being spent week to week. They'll do, they know the household expenses, but do they know the higher level stuff? Are there any investments? What's in the pension accounts? What's the mortgage? Generally, no.
I find that a lot of the women I work with are nervous to ask questions. They don't want to appear like they don't understand. And actually men are similar in that way, in that they don't want to also ask questions because they don't want to be asked. But especially in meetings, I think most of the meetings that I attended as younger in my career, the female spouse would sit there and just observe, whereas most of the conversation was with the male. And I do think I'm personally trying to change that in my conversations with couples, because couple dynamics are especially convoluted when it comes to finances, because there's no right way to do it. Right. What have you guys found works kind of with encouraging both spouses to be involved with that?
I mean, from my perspective, I always, you're right? When I'm in client meetings, I can see, I try to look at the facial expressions as well, right? Because
body language.
Yes, because one person and it may be the male that's speaking, but I'm looking at what the female, what the spouse, what is her face telling me?
Yes.
Because you're right. What will typically happen in the past is you'll have the conversation, and then they will go home and have the conversation. Right. So the preference would be to have that include them in the conversation.
Yeah, sometimes I'll get an email back from, and the women do this especially, I'll get an email back just to me, not copied us, but it's like, he didn't say this, but this and this and this and this and this. I'm like, why didn't you say that in the meeting?
So I think, as a woman in the room, you have to sort of pull out, and get them involved in the conversation. And then also, when you are speaking about, all the investment jargon, you have to think of the fact that, there may be lack of financial literacy there. And so you can't just speak to the men in the room and assuming, they may have some investment knowledge.
But generally they don't either.
But that's true. That might be true.
The actual level of knowledge that I think they've shown in the research is pretty similar. Right, but again, it goes to the confidence. The men will be more confident in making the financial decision, whether the woman will be the one that wants to go away, and she really wants to understand it.
Yeah, wants to understand it, think it through, and ask the right questions, I think. Yeah. Well, I think this has been an amazing conversation. Yes. I really appreciate all of you guys getting up early and joining us on Money Sense. We are out of time, but thank you so much for joining us. As a final note, we wish to thank our sponsors, One TradeX and the CFA Society of the Cayman Islands, and remind our listeners that a rebroadcast of today's show can be heard as a podcast on the CFA Society Cayman Islands webpage, and encourage anyone who has a question or topic that they wish us to cover to please tweet us at Money Sense Radio and join the conversation. With that, thanks again, and please tune in again to Money Sense in 2 weeks' time.
Money Sense is brought to you with the support of One TradeX. One TradeX, the Cayman Islands' #1 choice for online brokerage.